Hello, welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar Wednesday, where we are focusing on strengthening mental health resilience for family support workers, presented by the National Family Support Network. Just for some context, we recognize that family support workers play a critical role in strengthening families and communities. And we also know that the nature of our work, especially in this current climate, exposes family support workers to heightened stress, secondary trauma, and emotional exhaustion. So we put together this special webinar to introduce practical strategies to develop mental health resilience, including mindfulness techniques, self-reflection activities, and coping mechanisms to foster long-term well-being. I am Brenda McChesney. I am the co-founder and co-executive director for the National Family Support Network, and I will be your moderator and co-presenter for today's webinar. If you're joining us online, you can listen directly through your computer speakers. And if you join via the phone number that Zoom provided, your line has been muted to minimize background noise. For those of you online, please note that the link to the Dropbox folder will be put into the chat. And here you'll see some additional handouts for context for today's webinar that you can download. Additionally, during today's webinar, you can put any questions that you have in the chat section at any time or raise your hand for us to call on you. We will have sections of today's webinar that are engaging, ask questions, get feedback. It's why we're doing it this style versus our traditional webinar format. But you're also welcome and invited to put questions in the chat too. And we have live tech support in the room by Felipe. If you have any questions, you can reach out to him at any time. And again, today's PowerPoint, the handouts, and a recording of this webinar will be available on the NFSN website on the Webinar Wednesdays page by this time on Friday. And last thing to note in housekeeping, when you exit the webinar, we will have an evaluation that automatically appears on your screen. And we ask you to take a moment to complete this, as it provides us with really helpful information as we plan future webinars. So with that being said, let's do a quick poll of who is joining us today. So our first poll today is, where are you joining us from? We'd love to know and get a visual of where you are in the world. And Manaj, you can vote other since you're joining us from London today. So you could do that. And looks like we have quite a bit of folks who have voted. We have about 60% who have come in, so we'll let it stay open for another moment. So again, you'll respond on the poll questionnaire in front of you. And we have most folks who have come on in. So let's go ahead and end that poll and we'll share the results. So it looks like we have almost an equal tie of folks coming in from the West Coast. I'm from Colorado today and I'm from California. So some West Coast love is coming in, as well as the Northeast. And we have folks in the South almost coming in an equal split. We have some Midwest representatives also, and other. If you're coming in from a place called other, put it in the chat. We'd love to know where you're joining us from today. All right, so we will end that poll and move on to our second poll, which is just getting a sense of who's in the room and what your affiliation is. So as this appears, please select from one of the options. Are you representing a family resource center, a family resource center network, an other family support program, an early childhood program, education, government and the child welfare, or government other, private funder, or other? So let's give you a second to fill that out. And if you put other, please also put in the chat, where are you joining us from? We'd love to hear and see that. All right, we are almost full. Give it another second. All right, let's go ahead and end that poll and we'll share the results. So we have about 40% representing Family Resource Center. So you are the folks, along with other family support programs and early childhood programs and education, who are working in the community with the community. We have the Family Resource Center networks who are helping to support family resource centers from across your state or the country. And we also have representation from government child welfare sectors as well as other. Thank you for the work you're doing. And looking forward to seeing what the other represents and where you're joining us from. Appreciate you participating in our polls. Let's see if we hear. Oh, we have Hawaii Islands. Hello, aloha. Thank you so much for joining us. And I'm guessing it's the tropical background that is our Hawaii representative today. All right, so just a quick moment about the National Family Support Network. So here you'll see the map across the entire United States of our members that are all in green. And over the past decade, the NFSN has quadrupled in size from originally being founded in 2011 with only 8 state networks, growing to 43 member networks that represent more than 3,000 family resource centers across the country, serving more than 2 million people annually. And our newest member to join was Oregon, who joined in February of this year. Welcome, Oregon. And our mission is to promote positive outcomes for all children, families, and communities by leveraging the collective impact of state family resource center networks and championing quality family support and strengthening practices and policies. And our vision is simply about turning that entire map green so that every family has access to quality family support services in their communities provided by FRCs that are strong, supported by very strong state networks. So enough about us, and now on to the content. So a little bit of context for today's webinar is we went into this year quickly recognizing that part of our role at the NFSN was to support family support workers and family support professionals across the country in ways that we hadn't really dove into before, and really thinking about what are the different measures that we can help bring to the table to build resilience, to build strength, to build leadership, and to create a container where you feel supported during a time of change, during a time of funding cuts and program cuts, and during a time where our families have had increased stress about accessing the programs and the services that are so important to them in their communities. So we created today's webinar as one of those resources and supports to equip you with extra tools, knowing that you already have a lot of tools in your toolbox, and we're excited to hear about those today. And so we partnered with Happier Me, and we'll talk a little bit more about Happier Me in just a moment. But really the purpose of this webinar is to help in recognizing stress and its impact on mental, emotional, and physical health, to help you in developing self-awareness around this, and to identify personal stress responses. Implementing mindfulness and daily reflection practice to promote your own resilience, to introduce coping strategies, including breath work, perspective shifting techniques, and daily practices for stress reduction, as well as ways that you can leverage technology such as the Happier Me app in supporting your ongoing mental health and wellness. At the very end, I'll also close it out with some upcoming training and leadership opportunities that we have, and again, that close of the evaluation. So now that we've set the context for today, just a little bit more about myself, and then I will ask Dr. Manoj Krishna to introduce himself. So my journey into mindfulness really started when I discovered I was pregnant with my oldest daughter in grad school. She's now 23, almost 24, and has given me my first granddaughter. And when I discovered I was pregnant, I realized it was the most important transitional shift in my entire life. And I really started to look at what can I do to be as healthy as possible when I was pregnant with her, and to have a natural birth if I was able to pull that off. And I began looking into breath work and pregnant yoga, and started doing visualizations and guided meditations. And it helped me incredibly through the process of pregnancy and having a natural birth. But what I realized on the other side of it was it wasn't just a tool and a strategy for a moment in time, but rather a strategy to live a longer, happier, more intentional, more grounded, and more connected life. And the more that time passed, the more I dove into my own space of mindfulness. I explored meditation, yoga, and ultimately became a certified Way of the Happy Woman coach. Received my 500-hour certification in Chi yoga and meditation, and have done a whole lot else in this space, and just try to always hold my own internal practice as something that's a priority. And it can be really hard to do in times of stress. And honestly, in prepping for this webinar, I reminded myself of some of those easy tools that we're covering today that I haven't been doing in the last few weeks because my own stress levels have been high. So today is really about taking practical strategies and weaving them into your life, and remembering that they're there for you to help you each day as you progress. So with that being said, I'll turn it on over to Dr. Manoj Krishna, who is the CEO and founder of Happier Me, to share a little bit about himself.
Thank you, Brenda, and very nice to meet you all. Thank you for inviting me. I'm in England, And I used to be a spine surgeon for 30 years and had a wonderful career. And one day I had this profound insight. And that insight was that all the stress I was experiencing, the anxiety, and it's the same as the stress and anxiety we all experience, I thought it was all coming from the outside. But actually, I realized it was coming from the way my mind was reacting to the events around it. And I wasn't aware of that process. And I had this insight that if we had a better understanding of our own mind, we could prevent and overcome our mental health challenges more easily. So I left medicine to start Happier Me. And our mission is to reduce suffering, to help people lead happier lives, and to make the world a better place. And that's why I was delighted when Brenda reached out, and we've created a partnership with the NFSM to support the millions of families in the United States and the family support workers to deal with all their challenges. Because you see, the challenges of life will keep coming. But if we are strong on the inside and calm on the inside, we can meet all those challenges with confidence and with calm. So that's really what we're going to be sharing with you today. Back to you, Brenda.
Thank you so much, Manoj. So let's just level set a little bit about how stress impacts our lives and how it impacts our our health, and our well-being. So the question is really, how common is it? And what's shocking and sad is that 70 to 80% of us report having moderate to severe stress. 77 say that stress impacts performance at their work, and 76% say that stress affects their sleep. And when we look at the top causes of stress for family support workers, folks who are in the field that we're in, we come up with these top 10 categories, and really want you to think about how these might be affecting you as I go through them. So the first is vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue. And this can come from repeated exposure to trauma, grief, and crisis in the communities that we serve or in our own lives, as well as the emotional exhaustion from holding space for other people's pain and experiences. The second are stress that comes from high caseloads and administrative burden. So this could look like juggling multiple families or clients with complex needs, or excessive documentation and data entry required as part of your core job. The third, low pay and job insecurity. So this can come from financial stress due to undercompensation or lack of long-term employment stability or benefits, especially in this climate where you may be wondering if resources for your program are going to be cut in the future with the budget cuts that are happening. The fourth is really looking at lack of support and supervision. So stress can come from inadequate access to reflective supervision or mental health resources in your work environment, or feeling isolated or unsupported in challenging situations. Number five, looking at systemic barriers of stress and bureaucracy. So this could be frustration with systemic inequalities and slow-moving systems, or navigating red tape when trying to get families the help that they need. Number six is role ambiguity and mission creep. So being expected to do it all beyond your official role, or maybe stress coming from the blurred lines between professional responsibility and personal boundaries. Number seven is the stress that comes from emotional labor and boundaries. Constantly managing emotions while staying regulated and supportive to everyone around you, or stress that comes from difficulty detaching from work after hours. Number eight would be crisis-driven work environment. So the stress that comes from the pressure to respond immediately to urgent needs and emergencies, or from constant high alert states that can feel unsustainable. Number nine is the stress that comes from lack of recognition or appreciation. So this might look like feeling undervalued by supervisors, leadership, or the broader system, or the disconnect between the impact of the work and how it's acknowledged. And number 10 could be stress that comes from cultural mismatch or disempowerment. So navigating systems that don't reflect the communities being served. Family support workers often serve diverse communities with unique cultural backgrounds, traditions, and lived experiences. Sometimes, however, the systems that they work within, whether government agencies, nonprofit, or social service programs, may not reflect or honor these communities' identities. And that can then cause stress from feeling disempowered or unsupported when advocating for equity. So I'd like you to take a moment and in the chat, put one or more of the stresses on this list that you have experienced in the last week or actively even longer. We'd love to hear from you. What are some of the stresses on this list? You can put the number or you can type out which one it is. So first, curious on from this list, what resonates most for you? So I see number 5, systemic barriers and bureaucracy, income. Yes. Low paying or job insecurity. Yes. Many threes and fours, lack of support or supervision, vicarious trauma, compassion fatigue. That's a very real thing. And it can be very hard to detach from absorbing the trauma that we see in the communities that we're working with. I see also number 7, emotional labor and boundaries, having healthy boundaries and how to process that. Number 2 and 5, high caseloads and administrative burden. I really appreciate Leanne, you naming all of them, the 1, 3, 4, 6, 7, and 8, right? Like there is a lot of ways that our environments right now are causing stress in our lives. Thank you so much. I see 1, 2, and 3. Again, that high caseload, trauma, lack of support. Number 10, disempowerment or cultural mismatch. Appreciate everyone chatting these in. Now I'd like you to take a second. If you're personally feeling a sense of stress that isn't on this list and you feel comfortable, you're welcome to put it in the chat right now. What other stresses do you have going on that drew you to today's conversation? I see Joan in New Hampshire. Joan's unofficial nonprofit motto, do more with less. And certainly that can cause stress, although positively framed. Any additional sources right now? This list may have covered quite a bit of the core stressors. All right, thanks everyone for putting your thoughts in the chat. I do see Shannon just said number 1, the vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue and leaving the job at work. Yeah. Elder parents needing more. Yeah. Helping take care of our parents as they get older can be quite a bit of an additional stress on ourselves. So when we look at the landscape of how stress shows up in our bodies, it's dynamic and complex. And there's this huge list of things, of symptoms that may not feel like stress, but actually they are. So difficulty sleeping, right? How many times do you wake up in the middle of the night right now? Feeling worried. How often do you have that sense of worry happening in your body? Where is it happening in your body? Feeling irritable or a lack of energy. I know I can personally say that I feel like for 3 weeks, every day I wake up tired and I feel like I'm tired throughout the day. And I realize I haven't been leaning into my own self-care and have been working way too much to try to manage what's happening in this climate right now. Headaches, loss of sexual desire, tummy pain, muscle aches, overthinking, weight gain, low self-esteem, or the inability to focus. Which one would you say is your highest one right now? Would love for you to pop it in the chat. Which symptom do you feel like from this list or another is showing up most strongly for you right now? I'm seeing sleeping, overthinking, difficulty sleeping, headaches, overthinking everything, all caps Renee, I feel you. Feeling tired, muscle aches and headaches, lack of focus, lack of energy. This is great. Overthinking, anxiety, headaches, irritable, sleep. Yes, you're not alone. Yeah. Thank you so much. So when we look at health problems, 50% of all health problems are linked to stress. And stress accounts for 70% of all doctor visits. All doctor visits. The amount of money that we spend and time going to see doctors who try to fix our problems with a various array of strategies, some amazing and some just band-aids. Stress tying to 70% of all doctors' visits. So what if we could change that? What if we could flip the script and have it be 30%? Wouldn't that feel great? So the landscape of stress impacts our immune system in a multitude of ways. So this list is wide, right? Looking at blood pressure, heart attacks, diabetes, stroke, a shorter lifespan, dementia, depression, anxiety, irritable bowel syndrome, stomach ulcers, ulcerative colitis, diabetes, cancer, obesity, and sexual dysfunction. All are impacts from stress to our immune system and how it affects our body showing up every day. And I invite you, when we talk about the facts, to not only think about yourself, but your loved ones. Are you seeing these things play out in your parents, in your siblings, in your family members, in your children or grandchildren, in your coworkers, in the communities that you live in, with your friends? The barriers to overcoming stress are not ginormous, but they are present, right? Like we may not be aware that we're stressed. I can personally say that my mom like operates in a pretty high stress level often, and her system isn't used to being in a more reduced calm state. And so that often can feel odd to her when things are at peace. And that comes from the childhood that she had. Or a barrier to overcoming stress is that we think it's normal, right? It's normal to constantly be thinking about something and not being able to sleep and waking up all night long, or having our heart feel like it's constantly in a state of anxiety. But that's not normal. That's not how our bodies are meant to operate and meant to exist in this world. Or we don't think it's possible to overcome it, right? Like it just is what it is, and therefore I just put up with it and there's nothing I can do about it. Or we think that we should be able to cope, right? If I admit that I'm stressed and I have all these things and it's a problem, then I'm not strong enough and I need to be strong. And so therefore I can just deal and cope with this thing, what's happening in my life, the way stress is showing up. Or we don't know how to get help, or we don't know how to get started. But the great news is we have some really great tips today that if you have just one more tool to put in your toolbox to walk away from this training, one more tool that you could share with a loved one, that you could share with a community member, that you could share with a coworker or a family that you work with, then today's a victory. And you just showing up here today is a commitment to saying, I recognize stress is a real deal thing right now in my reality or those I care about, and I want to do something more about it. So we're going to open up the rooms to do a paired activity. So you and another person will have 6 minutes total, about 3 minutes each. And we'd love for you to take a moment to share as much as you feel comfortable sharing about what your primary sources of stress are, how does it manifest and show up in your body, and what are your barriers to overcoming it. And when we come back from the break, we'll ask some folks for examples or what they heard or what stood out to them and begin to reveal that stress and how it's showing up in our lives so that we can begin to practice tools to improve our situation. So Felipe, if you could you please pop this in the chat um, for everyone, the questions for them to go into their breakouts, and let us know when you're ready to open up the rooms and we'll go into a parent share.
Hey Brenda, sorry, I have to type the question on the chat box. I can't copy and paste, so just give me a second, okay?
Okay.
All right.
And give everyone a second to think about what their responses are so you can come in to prepared for these conversations of what you'd like to share. So again, what are your primary sources of stress? How does it show up in your body? And what are your barriers to overcoming it? I see that someone does not have a microphone. So you would be able to chat in that breakout, I believe. So if that's not possible, the person who doesn't have a microphone, you can come back into the main room and then we can work it from there. But you should be able to chat with the person who's in there. Awesome. Thank you, Felipe, for putting the questions into the chat. And again, we're giving you 6 minutes, 3 minutes each for one person to share first and the second person to share next.
Okay. All right, sending invitations out right now.
And all you have to do is click join and we will close out the rooms for you to come back shortly. And Felipe, it looks like we just had a person just join the webinar. So if we need to assign them
Okay.
to the room, we can.
All right, Jessica. Do you want to just explain to her what we're doing before I send?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, Jessica, we are sharing with another person in an assigned room on what your primary sources of stress are and how it shows up in your body, and what are some of the barriers to you overcoming stress, based upon the conversation that we've been having about talking about how stress shows up. And so you'll have 3 minutes to share and 3 minutes to listen to the other person. So we'll have that assigned there. And then Felipe, I see some folks are alone in rooms, so I'll go ahead and start to move them.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Okay, I sent Jessica.
I'll start from the bottom.
Okay.
And can we pause the recording, Felipe?
Yes.
Can be stressful sometimes. So, but as I was sharing with the other person in my group, was my biggest way that I relieve stress, and I learned how to do that because I took care of my parents, older parents, and the biggest thing that I did was I joined a gospel group, and so we sing. And that was 20 years ago, and I'm still with the group. So but that's how I cleared my mind for real, just dealing with the stress of it all.
That's a beautiful example, Judy. Later on in our webinar, we'll talk a little bit about the importance of joy in our lives, finding joy, happiness, laughter, gratitude, in addition to the skills that we're going to practice today. And it's one of those things that makes our heart smile, right? From the inside out, even if everything else is feeling really overwhelmed and heavy, that we get to have that space that just, it fills us with joy. I love that. Erwin, I see you shaking your head, smiling. I'm curious what's on your mind. Tell me more.
So yeah, we had a wonderful discussion. That was Nicole and I. We're in the group together, and what I said was, first of all, we just defined stress. So I think there's a difference between stress and the pressures we face in life. So life is going to send us pressure throughout or challenges. I think stress comes about when we are unable to deal with those challenges, or we're not prepared to deal with the challenges, and then we stress ourselves out. And then when we stress ourselves out, for me, I take walks. I do something that's physically engaging because it causes me to think a lot clearer. And I guess we got the blood pumping and the blood is being more oxygenated. And it's amazing. While walking, I'm coming to a solution, or solutions are just being presented to me. Likewise, singing is that same thing. You get joy out of singing, but think about how much oxygen rich, or how much richer your blood is with oxygen that's flowing to the brain, and it causes you to think. And you can think, you can build strategy to work through that stressful situation. That's just my formula of how I do things. And that's what Nicole and I just talked about.
That's just simply beautiful to hear. And you hit on so many of the important points of understanding daily pressures versus stress, understanding how our bodies respond, understanding the role of oxygen and breath toward us feeling less stressed, whatever that activity is, a walk, exercise, singing, dancing. Dancing is my go-to. If I dance, like my stress melts away, right? Like how can you dance and not feel stressed? It's like one of those wonderful go-tos. Others, what are some other insights that you have, or what you shared in your conversation? Maybe one or two more folks.
I'll
If you
jump
raise
in.
your hand,
I
Beth,
did, and then I took it down. I'm not good
Okay.
with this technology, but Erwin, I love the singing, crank the music, do the dance parties in the kitchen for sure. I want to say I was with Yvonne from Florida, and I want to be Yvonne who like says, I don't have time to worry about stress. It doesn't change anything. She had a really great perspective. I spoke to the personal stress, the family stress, and the work stress. Like it feels like everywhere I go, everyone I talk to is stressed. So I absorb and feel that energy. It feels heavy. And I think I do a really good job. For me, it's my faith, it's prayer, it's trusting in the plan and not my plan. And that's how I get grounded. But lack of time and being surrounded by so much stress and anxiety, I can feel the energy of those all trying to do this work with me, and my family that's struggling with managing their stress. I would love suggestions on how to cope with that. So that's what we talked about.
I appreciate that, Bethany. Manoj, did you have a thought there to share?
Yes, yes. Okay. So let me share my screen. Okay, here we go. Okay. Can you see my screen, Brenda?
Yes, but I see the presenter view on it.
Will I go to slideshow?
There you are.
Okay, cool.
Perfect.
All right. So our approach at Happier Me is saying, yes, when we are stressed, we need to calm our mind down. And then we need to find out why we are stressed in the first place. So look at this traffic jam and ask yourself this question. Does stress come from the event or the way our mind reacts to that event? Because if it comes from the event, then everyone in that traffic jam should be stressed and to the same degree. So you might be sitting next to somebody who's not stressed and you're very stressed. Once you realize that our stress is individual to us, but our mind assumes it comes from the outside. So once you realize that, then you see that to get over stress, you can either change the event, which is the traffic jam, which often, as you know, you can't do, or whatever it is that is a challenge outside, or we can change the way our mind reacts to it. If we want to change our reaction, we need to understand our own mind and where does that reaction come from? And that understanding, which is what we're going to be exploring today, can help us be free of stress for the long term. Now, wouldn't that be amazing? So all of us react differently, as you know, to the same event. And it's just about being curious. What's going on in my mind to make me feel this way and react in this way? Is there another way I could see the situation? Is there another way I could react? Okay. So the key thing to understand is stress is an automatic reaction from our thinking, and we seem to have no control over it. Now, we've all seen that in our own lives. And that reaction repeats itself. So every time that external trigger comes, you'll be having the same reaction. So if it's a traffic jam, you'll have that reaction. Or if someone speaks in a particular way at home or at work, you'll have the same reaction. So our mind responds in repetitive ways to the same trigger. And again, when you notice that, you say, okay, what can I learn here? And how can I show up differently? So, you know, our mind responds to stress in some typical ways. One is, of course, we try to change things, and nothing is wrong with that. So if I can change the traffic jam, great. Sometimes it's easy. I can change the flat tire. But imagine trying to change, you know, someone's opinion or the financial circumstances we're in. If we can, of course, we will. But if we can't change, what are we going to do? As Brenda pointed out, stress is harming our health. So my health is being harmed, and I need to do something about it because I can't wait for the rest of the world to keep changing. I need to change so that I can be more healthy and less anxious, less worried, less stressed. And that's what we're going to talk about today. So the second thing our mind does is it zooms in, we lose perspective. So the traffic jam becomes my whole life. Or if I've got a pin in my finger, then the pin becomes my entire existence. Or if I've got a lack of money or whatever it might be. So zooming out here can be really helpful. And of course, we like to blame others. We feel like a victim of our circumstances. We want to escape from stress. So alcohol is an easy one, or it could be drugs or something else. And in severe cases, we can get depressed or anxious. So that's the typical way our mind responds to stress. So how can we deal with it? Step one is we need to breathe, pause, slow the reaction down. And I'm going to show you a breathing exercise in a minute. The second thing we can do is to zoom out and be grateful. Because as you know, our stress makes our mind zoom into a problem. Say I failed an exam, my whole life is a failure. But actually, if I zoom out, I realize I'm still loved by so many people. I've got my health, my breath, and there are many, many things to be grateful for. So zooming out is really helpful. And then I ask a question. Is there another way of seeing the situation or another way to respond? The moment you ask yourself that question, immediately your mind gives you options that you can consider. And stress, you know, is just the difference between how things are and how we want them to be. Say the traffic jam. So acceptance can dissolve stress. So the question I ask myself quite often is, can I accept things as they are? Can I accept the way my partner is loading the dishwasher or hanging the clothes to dry or how clean the kitchen is? These are minor things. But if you can start accepting small things like that that cause stress, then you can start accepting the big things, you know, the political situation in the world or whatever it is, anything that's outside my zone of control. The moment I can accept things as they are, my stress can dissolve. So zooming out, as you know, is really important because our mind, you know, takes what we have already for granted. And when I zoom out, this is my list of things that I'm grateful for. My health, my ability to think clearly, be sensitive to beauty, my children, and of course, I have enough food to eat. Of course, I'm not sure everyone does, and so on. Sunshine, hot showers, a warm bed, friends, love. You'll have your own list. It's so important to focus on that list because it's not something our mind does naturally. But doing that can be a counterbalance to the stress in our lives. So the second thing we can do is self-reflection. And Brenda, maybe at this point I should pause and we should just do that breathing exercise we talked about. So I'm going to show you all a breathing exercise. And I'm just going to stop sharing my screen so you can see me. And it's really simple. So we're going to do this for 5 minutes together. Okay. So I want you all to take a deep breath in through your nose and release it. Another one. And release it. Now, I want you to breathe through your nose to a count of 4. Breathe in to a count of 4 and breathe out to a count of 4. Breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out 1, 2, 3, 4. Again. Now this time, when you're breathing out, it's the slow exhalation, the slow release of the breath that calms our parasympathetic nervous system and calms our mind. Okay, so breathe in 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathe out slowly 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay. Now, the next step of this breathing exercise is to just take your index finger and keep it under your nose for a second. Now, as you breathe in, notice how the air going in is a little cooler and the air coming out is slightly warmer. Just try that now. You see that? One more time. And breathe out slowly. Now you can take your finger away. So now for about 4 minutes, all we're going to do is practice this, breathing in to a count of 4, breathing out to a count of 4. And as you're breathing in, notice the air coming into your nostril is slightly cooler and the air coming out is slightly warmer. You can do this anytime, at a bus stop, in a car, at work. Even if you do it for a couple of minutes, you'll be fine. So let's just do it for 4 minutes now and see how that feels. Just focus on the breath. Doesn't matter if your thoughts are coming and going. That's okay. Bring your mind back to the breath. Take the deep breath in. There's a couple more minutes to go. Remember, it's a slow breathing out, but really starts calming your mind and your heart. One more minute. Okay, thank you, everyone. You could open your eyes now. So my practice is I do this for about half an hour every morning, just following my breath. And throughout the day, my mind becomes really stable. I had a really stressful job, you can imagine, as a surgeon, all the pressures. And this is the technique I use to calm my mind and deal with all the pressures in the day in a much better way. What do you think of that, Brenda? Do you want to come in with something on that?
Yeah, I know just personally, even in this moment, how beautiful it feels, and also the stillness amongst everyone else. I'm curious by an emoji what folks thought about just, I guess all in all, it was about 6 minutes total of the various techniques in the 4 minutes practice. Yeah, and how
And the
powerful
key
that
thing
can be.
is it's a practice, remember, it's like swimming. The more you practice or to play the piano, any skill you want to learn, you have to practice. So make it a regular practice. And then you can call on it at any time of the day, you know?
And what I was brought to is I have a 7-year-old bonus son in my life, and like just the simplest things, like the one of feeling the temperature of the breath coming in and out, and the ways that we can do this with our families to teach simple little ways of being mindful and breath work and understanding. Focusing on that takes your mind off of the amount of time that you're spending doing it too. And such a great way that you can incorporate your family into practicing some breath work as part of your mindfulness practice.
And of course, everyone here is dealing with really challenged families, so you can do it with them right there, you know? Saying.
The other thought that I had is I had a chance for 3 years. I was a director of a foundation. It was a private family foundation out of Boulder, and they were based in contemplative practice, meaning that they had like mindfulness as their roots, and they invested a lot into meditation and mindfulness with families and communities. And every meeting that we had, it started with a moment of silence of breath work. It was about 1 to 2 minutes. And while we were doing that, I thought to myself, okay, maybe at the NFSN, before we start our meetings, like just starting with that moment of coming to center, right? Like that moment allows us to be present right here, and our mind stops racing from the past or into the future and just grounds us into this conversation. And how showing up for our colleagues when we're meeting, or showing up for our families. In that time that I worked for that private family foundation, we funded a program in DC in Ward 7 and Ward 8 that worked with meditation and mindfulness with families, one-on-one with parents. And one of the practices that they would have as a group is coming in and having a moment of breath work. And one of the women that was interviewed said that moment was the first time in my entire life that I heard silence, that she was always used to noise, talking, sounds, things happening. And in that moment of breath work, finally, like her brain was able to have a moment of clarity and silence. So it's really powerful, even in the smallest moments in our life.
Very powerful. Practice it regularly, and you'll find your life changes. Because as we said, our mind is reactive, and that's the reaction that creates the stress. So this breath work creates that space between the trigger on the outside and the reaction on the inside. And in that pause, that little space, we can use our intelligence to respond in a more creative way, whether it's through acceptance or whatever. Okay. May I continue, Brenda? I was going to carry on with. So the step one is we've done this. We've done strategies to deal with stress right now, which is, it's like a fire extinguisher. Stress is a fire in our brain. We are just doing all these strategies, zooming out, breathing, acceptance, to really put the fire out right now. The second step is to find out, hey, can I stop this fire from happening again? Okay. And that requires self-reflection. So I'm going to be a detective. I'm going to be curious. Why did my mind react in that way? What can I learn about myself? How can I respond differently next time?
Manoj,
Now,
could
yes.
you put it into the slideshow view?
Oh, I'm so sorry, Brenda.
A
Yes.
little closer. Thank you so
Yes.
much.
No, thank you for reminding me. Okay. So these three questions, why did my mind react in that way? What can I learn about myself? And how can I respond differently next time? And how do you begin? If this all feels unfamiliar, how do you begin? Just like a child. You're curious, you notice, you look without judgment. You don't look at that flower and say that's a good flower, bad flower, or the moon and say, oh, that's a good moon or bad moon. You don't judge. Similarly, when you're looking at yourself, the key thing is not to judge. Now, taking ownership doesn't mean that somebody's not responsible for your stress. But taking ownership means that you are going to take charge of feeling less stressed on your own. You're not going to wait for the world to change. You're going to change because your body and mind is the one that's really being impacted by this stress. And then we can ask a question. So I'll give you an example. So stress is an opportunity to learn about the many hidden patterns of thinking that create our own stress. And this understanding can help us manage it better and bring freedom. And this might sound very strange to people who've not heard it before because our mind assumes you're responsible for my stress, for example. But what happens is the first thing, and there are many different things we can learn about ourselves, but one of them is conditioning. So all our influences from childhood are stored in our memory. And it could be family, the media, culture, and so on. But we're not aware we're being conditioned, you see, and that becomes our idea of normal. So it's like a thief comes into my house at night, doesn't steal anything, but puts his or her thoughts in my head. When I wake up in the morning, I say they're my thoughts and I want to defend them. And that's conditioning. So all our opinions, our beliefs, and our behaviors come from our conditioning, and so does everyone else's. So then what happens is my mind is always comparing what it sees in the world with what it knows, and then it reacts faster than that bullet's coming out of the gun. I've immediately had a stress reaction, whether it's to the traffic jam or what you've said or what I've read in the news, because it's different to what I already know, or the way you're stacking the dishwasher, or whatever it might be. And that's why we get so stressed. Now, this stress comes from our particular slice of memory. What do I mean by that? So say I'm on the streets of Saudi Arabia, where I've never seen gay people at all, and I see two men kissing, I'll have a particular reaction. If I'm in the streets of New York, I see two men kissing, I say that's normal. So my reaction comes from what I regard as normal. But we're not aware of this, you see. So we assume we are correct. So the person in Saudi Arabia or wherever assumes their way of looking at things is the only way. And we assume our way of looking at things is the only way. And then, of course, we can either have an argument or we get stressed. And these reactions repeat themselves. Now, the strength or the amplitude of the reaction depends on how disturbed my mind is at the same time, at the time. So recently, a teacher asked a child and confiscated the phone in class. The child took out a knife and stabbed the teacher. Now you'd think, why would they do that over a small incident like that? Or you've heard of road rage and so on. But remember, if the mind is already disturbed, already stressed, then the smallest trigger will create the biggest reaction. And you'll see that in the families that you're dealing with. And of course, we know the reactive mind is not intelligence. If I see my mind is reacting, I'll pause, step back, and I'll say, look, let me come back to the situation when I'm calmer. So it's just something out there is different to how I want it to be in here, or a difference between who I am and my idea of who I want to be. And therefore, acceptance can dissolve stress. I'm not saying it's possible all the time, but if I can accept things, my stress can dissolve. So questioning this conditioning brings freedom. Can observe how my past influences have shaped my thinking and beliefs, and I can ask if that still serves me. And can I reframe what I'm thinking? And remember, it's always possible to choose one thought over another. So you can choose a positive thought over a negative one, and you could be happier. Or you can choose a negative one and be stressed. Just try it and see. This ability to choose one thought over the other can bring freedom from all stress. The next one is comparison. So if I'm your best friend and I'm telling you about my perfect holiday, what do you feel? A lot of people will say, I feel envious, because our mind is comparing all the time and we're not aware of it. That's why social media is causing all this chaos. So I don't want to feel jealous, but I blame others for making me feel that way. That's what social media is doing. And it can damage my friendship. I stop talking to you because I think you're just showing off, and so on. So there are three stages, you see, of this insight or realizing what's happening. One is after the event. So I learn, oh my goodness, my mind was comparing all the time. So it's not Brenda's fault for telling me about her holiday. It's my mind comparing that's causing it. But stage two is during the event, my mind realizes, my mind's comparing, and I stop being stressed. Or in stage three, the pattern is broken and I don't get envious at all. So see the beauty of this understanding. I'm talking to these children in school, and I say, how would your life change if you compared yourself with others only when it served you, not automatically right now? And this girl at the back said, I would be free. So this deeper understanding of what's happening in our own mind can bring freedom from stress and anxiety. And lastly, the third thing I want to talk about is our expectations. We have so many expectations of the people in our lives. Look at the list on the right. To be loved, listened to, feel important, feel accepted. By the way, none of this is right or wrong. It's just the way our mind is, right? So if these expectations are not met, we get hurt, we blame others for making us feel bad. And of course, we don't communicate these expectations. We expect them to read our mind, particularly men. We're terrible at communicating expectations. And this is one of the reasons why we get stressed. So here are some questions we could ask. What expectations do I have? How many of them can I let go? Because the longer the list I have, the more stressed I'm going to be. If I do have an expectation of you, may I communicate it with care? Can I take ownership? And how can I respond better when they're not met? So if I get hurt, can I respond in a nicer way by communicating rather than withdrawing or hurting you back, and so on. So there are, of course, other things you can do. You can have a positive attitude, see the best in a person. Um, avoid escaping, because as you know, escape from our emotional distress is one of the big drivers of addiction, and 1 in 6 people has a substance abuse problem at the moment. And as Brenda said, make time to be still. A quiet mind is not reactive and can respond with intelligence. Remember one thing, that just as I am conditioned and that's shaping my behavior, other people are also conditioned and that's shaping their behavior. And this understanding can lead to compassion and forgiveness, because people are not aware of their own behavior and how they're thinking and why they are thinking. So letting go of our past trauma is a gift we can give ourselves. Of course, there are other practical things you can do. Exercise, somebody mentioned today, get professional help, mindfulness, meditation, and so on. So Brenda, you're going to come in and talk about this now.
Yes. Yeah. Thank you so much, Manoj. This was brought up earlier about the example of singing in church and starting that practice 20 years ago, and it being the constant throughout the last 20 years as a place to release the stress and the hardships that we experience in our day-to-day life. And there's so much research now that's being done in the importance of gratitude and the importance of living with joy. We don't have time to cite that research today, but we invite you to lean into this space in the moments that you can. Try to practice cultivating gratitude and living with joy each day, even if it's literally a calendar reminder that you put in of finding one thing to be grateful for. So that involves like looking at people freshly, like finding what it is and the assets that they bring to the table that are beyond the things that might be triggers or stressors for you. It includes appreciating the small things. One of the things I did with my girls when they were little, and I do with my bonus son now, is at dinner, we talk about gratitude. What's one thing that we were grateful for today? What's one hard thing that helped me learn something new today? So taking the challenges and turning them into opportunities for learning more about ourselves or other people around us. And that space of living in the moment, like the stress is caused often by the trigger of comparing ourselves to the past or the worry in the future. And so being able to try to say, what can I control right now, right here in this moment, and focusing on this, because we aren't fortune tellers. We can't predict what the future holds. And in this climate right now, with the level of uncertainty that many of us are experiencing, it's very real to say that is the unknown is a real concern. But if we live there, all those triggers and the ramifications of stress and our health and our wellness will be impacted. So just trying to come back to what do I know right now? What can I do right now in this moment? Manoj, back to you.
Thank you. Okay. So just to carry on, our mission at Happier Me is to help people lead happier lives. And my passion is to bring this into education. So I've been working with children and people in colleges and schools. And this understanding has the potential to transform individual lives and the world. For example, all the divisions we have as human beings is just our conditioning. All the prejudices we have, all the racism, all of that you see is just my conditioning, which I'm not aware of. The moment I become aware of how my conditioning has shaped my life and I can question it, then I can be in charge of walking my own road in life and I can be free. And so many of my pressures and stresses can dissolve. And that's just a taster of things. So this is the Happier Me app. We've got a special discount for NFSN members. It's 40% discount. It says $36 a year. We have separate sections for teens and adults. It's created by experts. It addresses the root cause, not just the symptoms. There's an online journal and community forum for support. And it covers not just mental health, but also relationships, addiction, and the creation of communication leadership skills to be successful at work. And there are hundreds of podcasts, videos, stories, and in-depth modules. And essentially, it's a toolkit for a happier life. I'm going to take you on a quick 5-minute tour of the app. And then, of course, you can download it and go for a free trial. There's no commitment to purchase it or anything. So let me just share that with you.
While Manoj is pulling that up, I just want to share that, in my own mindfulness and meditation journey, I've had the opportunity to help co-create apps and be advisors on other apps. And when I was first introduced to this, it struck me as being such a comprehensive, user-friendly tool for tuning in, for daily reflections, for breaking down tips and the way that it incorporates what your stressors are and auto-populates resources. And even beyond that it takes a workplace perspective of helping you within your workplace relationships. And it also offers a space to interact with teens and in your own relationships. And so we wanted to partner to bring this as a resource to all of our networks and their FRCs and people in the family support field as a way to weave into your own life, into your workplace with the families that you work with and the youth that you serve. So really is a unique opportunity to have all of those angles in one single resource.
So we've been developing this for 5 years. We've got hundreds of people around the world who've contributed. So let's start with the first. This is the Happier Me for adults. And in the menu on the top right, you'll see the first item is Happier Me for teenagers. So it's one app for the whole family. And the Feel Better Now section, we're talking about stress, but you can see it covers all the different emotions we have. So say you're stressed. The first thing it offers is a breathing exercise, which I've shown you, a meditation, a short video, a longer video, and a mini podcast. And once we've put the fire out and we're feeling more calm, then we can investigate stress in more detail. And the more we learn about what's happening in our own mind, the more we can be in charge of being free of this for the long term. So at the end, for example, we offer 14 ways you can be in charge of dealing with stress and with your own wisdom or intelligence. So I'll just show you a couple of things. So this great quote is what I said to you earlier. Sometimes all we can do is change ourselves, but that changes everything. So the circumstance doesn't change, but my stress can dissolve because I have changed. And the way my mind is reacting to that has changed. So I've shown you breathe, pause, slow the reaction, and you can carry on looking at that. So that's the Feel Better Now section. Then there's a daily practice. So for example, let's look at this. So if you're stressed, you pick that emoji and you say, why? There's an online journal in the app. It asks you, why are you feeling this way? It could be you have an exam, you save that to your journal, and then the app will present you all the resources we have created or curated to deal with stress. So whatever you're feeling today, immediately the app offers you solutions to address that. For example, there's short videos and stories and articles and podcasts, meditations, and then of course you can see the module on stress underneath. Now there are other things every day. This is all free, by the way, the daily practice. There's a breathing exercise, a question of the day, a quotation, and so on. Now, there are 8 broad topics. So remember I said it's not just mental health. It's also about work and leadership or relationships. All of these can cause problems or managing our emotions. So if you look at work and leadership, we have short videos, we have Feel Better Now section, there are life stories, guided questions is like a coach in your pocket. There are modules on communication, leadership, work, bullying, how to make better decisions, deal with criticism, diversity and inclusion, how to be kinder and create a culture of kindness at work. Podcasts on a whole range of different subjects, as you can see, like people management, dealing with bullying, avoiding stress, resolving conflict, and so on. A library of events we've hosted, guided meditations and blogs. And that's just work and leadership, and the same depth you'll find in all the other ways. So here are some awareness exercises. We call it our mental health gym. So they're mini workouts to develop a healthy mind. For example, if you're noticing your thoughts, that is a 9-day exercise. And on day 3, you might learn your mind is reactive. Or on day 4, our mind assumes what we think is true. Just the ability to question that can give you a different perspective on things and transform your life. Or on day 5, how a thought triggers an action, or how our mind is judging all the time, and so on. So the more we learn about our own mind, the more in charge we can be of our thoughts and feelings. At the bottom, you'll find your online journal. So these are the guided questions here. And all the daily check-ins. So for example, whatever I've written, it comes in here, and I can write an article, and I get some prompts here, and so on. So and this is encrypted, by the way, so nobody else can see it. There's a community forum where you can ask a question, begin conversations. We have some expert coaches, and you can ask them a question anonymously. For example, we got one recently saying, I'm having suicidal thoughts. What do I do? And the entire community responded to support the person involved. We have some coaches in the app you can contact. And for people who want to go on a journey of personal development, we've got this pathway program. So it starts off with developing a calm mind. You'll find the breathing exercises I talked to you here. There's some nature meditations, tapping exercises, and so on. Then this section is about understanding yourself. Then you understand how your mind works. We've talked about conditioning and comparison, but there are many other things to learn. Then you can manage your emotions, including loneliness, depression, anxiety. And lastly, apply this to succeed in life in every way. There's much more here. For example, down here, you'll find hundreds of podcasts on different subjects. You can pick them based on whatever you want. These are ones on addiction, for example, or on relationships, or you can search for something. And similarly, we've got hundreds of short videos on many different subjects, including voices, which are just our various coaches talking about different subjects. And there's 1-minute nuggets of wisdom here. So once you've done all that, you'll find that in the menu on the top right is the Happier Me app for teenagers. And it's very similar in structure to the, but different content. For example, we've got a feature called Teen Talk, which are conversations with teenagers from around the world. And if you do nothing else after today, I'd encourage you to register and listen to one of these conversations. You will be so inspired. For example, this one is talking about fear with a group of children in a school. And you'll be amazed at their innate intelligence. In fact, all of us human beings have this innate intelligence that we can tap into, draw upon, and it can transform our life. There's so much more I could talk about, but I'm going to pause there and hand it back to Brenda.
Thank you so much, Manoj. I appreciate your insights and your tips and tools and walking us through the resources that are available on Happier Me. I did put in the chat, so if anybody would like to check it out, again, I think it's the first 2 weeks are complimentary. Is that correct?
Yes.
So there's no long-term commitment. You want to assess it for yourself, assess it for your family, and then we've worked a very special 40% discount, which makes it immensely reasonable for the year if you decide it's a tool that you want to use. And beyond the application of the app, we really wanted to uplift what some of these tools and knowledge and resources are for the folks in the field. We recognize that we are 1 minute past time, and we love staying on time and on cue. I have about 3 more minutes to share with you of upcoming things that you can tune into and the evaluation. So if you are unable to stay, we understand, but if you are, we'll be done here in just 1 second. Just in terms of what's ahead, next week, I'm leading a special webinar on the ROI of family resource centers. And this is a strategic approach to preventing child welfare involvement. This features Casey Family family programs, a really big supporter in the field of family support and family resource centers, as well as the Washington Network, akin, and the work that's being done in Washington, and uplifts the research that's being done to move the needle for return on investment of family resource centers. We also have our standard certification training. We've extended registration to the 11th. So we have one coming up on April 16th and 17th. This is our core standards of quality training for all family support professionals across the country and internationally. We also have our developing and sustaining effective parent advisory committee training. This is also happening in April the 22nd and 23rd. Registration is by the 15th of this month. You can find the links to register on our website at nationalfamilysupportnetwork.org. We also have our Connect with Effect outreach training. So authentically engaging and building community strategies on outreach and effective ways that they've been leveraged across the country, all put into this training for you. And this is happening on April 15th, registration by April 11th. Really exciting ahead as part of our suite of services to really lean in. And I'm realizing the date on this did not get updated, but we have a one-day virtual leadership summit to bring together thought partners across the spectrum, from philanthropy, policy and advocacy, data and evaluation, communication and marketing, a family support OG panel is what I've been fondly calling it, leaders from the family support field, all talking about this current climate, what's ahead, and equipping you with tools and resources, inspiration and strategies for the next 1 to 2 years. As we are in an unprecedented area, we wanted to equip you with all the resources possible. So this is now Wednesday, March 28th. And it will be from 11 to 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You can, if you're interested in learning more about this very special summit for the family support field, here's a QR code. It's also on the homepage of our website. And with that being said, I just want to take a second. Were there any follow-up questions that you have? We have an extra few minutes on our end of things. If you have one, you can raise your hand or you can put it in the chat. We had hoped to have more time for some Q&A. So just want to honor that for folks that are still here. Any questions that you might have that you would like to dive into? And if you don't, just a reminder that that Dropbox link includes the resources from today. Manoj put together a whole bunch of free webinars that are coming up into the future, including even the Beginner's Guide to Meditation. And again, the resources are here for you to tap into. And we always love hearing from you in the evaluation. What else would you like to know on this topic, or for the NFSN to explore more to support you in your day in and day out work? And I see we got a comment from Yvonne to another person, Bethany, staying strong. And absolutely, yes. Even a phone number to reach out. I love the family support work happening literally in this group as we connect with one another. So again, there's the link to today's materials. And Manoj, I appreciate you and everything you do and your vision to change the world and your interest in partnering with family support professionals and the NFSN. So thank you so much for your time today and everyone who joined us. It's great to see you and know that you're not alone and that we're all in this together. Until next time, thanks everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, Brenda. Thank you, everyone.